Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 453.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Where there is chaos, there is cash flow. Just in case you missed it, where there's chaos, there is cash flow. Now, many of you may remember that there was a time not too many years ago where you could say there was a financial meltdown, financial crisis. You could say it was global because it was happening everywhere and dominoes were falling and companies you thought never would be gone completely disappeared. In that same time frame, housing had a big hiccup, we'll call it, but at the same time, it created an opportunity for entrepreneurs to go out there and actually begin to solve problems and help people, because whether you realize it or not, when it comes to having a place to stay, there are people out there who want to do well by doing good. And I think we found one of them. We're going to introduce you to them and what they're out there doing. Because what's exciting about being an entrepreneur is that, yes, you get to solve problems. But when you can come up with an idea that solves problems from multiple different angles, you truly have found something unique. I have with me today none other than Jorge Newbery, CEO of American Home Preservation. Now, you may be familiar with them because they are doing good work. It is a crowdfunding platform that uses capital to buy some of the most distressed mortgages in the country at huge discounts. But understand, their goal is to help people stay in their homes. Now, if you ask George, you will find out that he likes to listen to punk rock while making investment decisions, which I think is interesting. But more importantly than that, he's written 3 books. He's been out there in the marketplace, has multiple things going on. But what I want you to pay attention to today is how this solution came to market. More importantly, the passion that you will hear in his voice will help you understand the same type of passion it's going to take to get your idea out there in the marketplace. So hopefully you're ready to take notes, you're ready to listen and learn from Jorge Newbery. George, you there?
I'm here.
How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that you are here. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So, you know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can occasionally imagine myself flying around town, you know, possibly dressed up in a cape and tights, saving people using my product or service. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So, for example, let's take Spider-Man. If you think about Spider-Man for a moment, there was a time where he was just a kid, going to school, trying to get good grades, taking some photos for the newspaper to make sure he had a little bit of pizza money, and maybe could take a girl out every now and again. Then one day, he gets bit by a spider and discovers he has a newfound superhuman ability, and he gets to choose whether he's going to use it for good or evil. So my question to you is, before your book, Burn Zones, before Debt Cleanse, before all the things that you've done, before AHP, before everything that we know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Jorge Newbery?
Well, That's quite a question. So very much an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I actually dropped out of high school, not because I just found it unchallenging. I wanted to start a business, and I started a record company for my parents' garage, and I had a lot of, this is early 80s, Southern California, and a lot of great punk music going on. So what I did was I just called up bands and said, hey, I'd like to do a record with you. And I worked as a busboy, and I'd use the money that I saved, because I could save everything because I lived at home. And I'd use that money to buy recording time and then pay for pressing these records. And that's how we started the record company, and put out 7 or 8 records. And that was, I've been an entrepreneur really all my life. And it's been I get an idea, a concept, and then, I put all my effort, drive, and focus into achieving that. And I have to say, a weakness is sometimes I achieve it and then I get kind of bored and the challenge is gone. And then I move on to something else, which I've recognized that as I've gotten older. And with our current company, we're going on a 10-year anniversary next year. So this is probably the longest time I've actually stayed on one single project. Because otherwise, and another weakness is historically I have not. I think I'm a very good entrepreneur, but a very bad manager. I'm not a team builder. I'm not. I judge myself by by my output. So if I work for 20 hours and get an immense amount of work done, I feel, oh, that feels good. But what about my 20? I have 21 employees, and I really need to bring the best out of them. And I have to say, I'm not the best at that. And actually, as this company's grown, which right now we've become, we've hit some good financial milestones. And actually, in the next few months, we're bringing in a management team, a new CEO. I'll still be involved, but I need someone who can really build the team. And that's something that, back to who I am. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm not the manager. And I think, first time in my life that I've actually seen a project all the way through to the point where, hey, this is I've laid a good base for someone, a team to come in and really take this company to American homeowner preservation to another level, and I think it's ready to do that. And so that's me. I mean, other than that, I've had huge success in the past, but it's always been, me leading the charge, and I need to really have a bigger team. And so I guess I'm giving you my weaknesses and my strengths at once.
Well, what I was going to say, because I find this to be interesting, is you possess a higher amount of self-awareness, and I think that's a good thing, because I think a lot of us out there in the marketplace, we need to understand, here's where I'm strong. This is what I can do. And while, I know that these other things are necessary, I just shouldn't be the one in charge of them. And being able to understand the difference of what position we should be playing on the team, I think is absolutely critical for entrepreneurs to be successful. But what I'm interested to understand right now is, you said record label. And I'm just like, okay, hold on. He's producing records. I can tell you that of the things that I thought you were going to start with, that was definitely not on my list. So I really got to know, how do we go from records to AHP? Because
sure.
There seems there's got to be a connection. It's going to be a fun story.
Yeah. So punk rock record label out of my parents' garage. Did that for a few years. Then I said, hey, then the '84 Olympics happened. I said, hey, I want to be a bike racer. And so I bought a bike and I bought all the books you could about bike racing. And, within a couple months, I was training 500 miles a week. And it took me a while, but eventually I became very competitive and was actually in the Olympic trials in '88. Competed at a very high level, did it for a living for several years. But once I got to about age 25, I said, hey, I'm not making that much money. The best racers in the U.S. do not make that much money. I need to find a real job. And one of my teammates' girlfriends was a loan officer. And so she kind of coached me into getting my real estate license. And then actually she was promoted and I got her job. And, I applied all the focus, the discipline, the hard work that I had learned just throughout my life, but especially in bike racing. And I applied it to my job. And within 6 months, I was the top producer. And this is going from like no real estate knowledge. Within 6 months, I was top producer, and then I became a loan officer. Then I became a branch manager, and within 3 years, I started my own mortgage company, and then I started buying properties, and the so I started buying properties in 2004, I believe, and within 3 or 4 years, I had 500 units. Then I started buying out of town, and I got up, over by 2000 and within 10 years of buying my first property, I had 4,000 units across the country. And, it was just all that hard work, just pouring everything into it. And my challenge though, I was generally, even when I made a mistake, I would usually try and make it work out okay, because I worked so hard and try to find a solution. But I ran into one challenge that I just could not solve, which was I bought this one property in Columbus, Ohio, called Woodland Meadows, 1,100 units, one of the largest apartment complexes in the country. I bought it at a bankruptcy court auction. It was nicknamed Uzi Alley because it had such a high crime rate. Yeah, it was an odd situation. It was backed into the highest income neighborhood in the city of Columbus, Ohio, but it was low to moderate income housing, and this huge, massive 54-acre complex. And so I turned it around, though. I moved in, which became my kind of calling card. People would be, and eventually by the time I was at Woodland Meadows, the media was all over it. Hey, this guy just bought the property and he's moving into Uzi Alley. I mean, it was kind of funny. It made headlines. And everyone thought it was very admirable. I have to tell you, though, the real reason I did it, I was cheap, and I still am. But I did not want to rent. I say, hey, I have 1,100 units, and there's a decent apartment already in the management building. I'm just going to live there, and that's why I did it. Was really to save on money and just pour all my money into my endeavors. But that property, that 1,100 unit property, got hit by an ice storm in 2004 on Christmas Eve. It was the largest federally declared disaster in Ohio history, and it just devastated this property. And it triggered this crazy series of events where over the next 2 years, I lost everything and ended up $26 million in debt. And so basically, all that run up, that over a decade of hard work and, working late hours, I ended up with absolutely nothing to show for it. And not only nothing, but a massive pile of debt. And that was more or less 2006. The market was still going strong. I was, on the other hand, I was on the sidelines, just devastated. And I was looking for a new, I was always moving forward and looking for a new something to latch onto. But look at this. At that point, I was broke. And I had millions of dollars in debt. I never filed bankruptcy. So the debt was just there. I couldn't file well, I could. I just didn't mentally. I could, and I just felt like admitting failure, and I just mentally could not do it. So I was a high school dropout. I was, I had millions of dollars in judgments against me, and and no money. And I'm saying, hey, let's start a business. So I started this company, American Homeowner Preservation, which was originally a nonprofit with the mission of keeping families at risk of foreclosure in their homes. But over time, it evolved into a for-profit and then an investment fund. And again, look at this. High school dropout, millions of dollars of judgments against me, horrific credit. And hey, but invest with me, everybody. And that, sorry, it was just so funny.
It is ironic.
And so, but what, and it was even worse because when this thing happened at Woodland Meadows, the city, I had one of the largest pieces of property in the city, and they wanted this property, and eventually the city currently owns the property. They wanted the property. At some point, they decided, hey, we're gonna take this property, and they did, and they accomplished that through somewhat of a public smear campaign. I was, the mayor's office leaked to the media, hey, Newbery's under criminal investigation. And, I saw it in the paper. That's the first I heard about it. I called my attorney and said, hey, what's this? He called the city attorney. So there's no investigation. But Well, it's in the paper. And, the mayor spokesperson apparently misspoke, but there was no correction. No one ever came back and said, oh, that's not true. And I was even arrested, which is crazy. I have no criminal record, but I was actually arrested for housing violations, if you can believe it. Failure to appear on housing violations, which was all headlines again.
Right.
Newbery, Woodland Meadows owner arrested. So all this stuff. So if you Googled me, not only do you see, well, not, I'm a high school dropout. Hey, this guy has millions of dollars in judgment. Oh my God. And he was arrested, and he has all this bad stuff about him and, the mayor's office and all these public officials in Columbus, Ohio, saying this is a really bad guy. And this is, and so, yeah. And now I'm out there trying to raise money. So it was difficult, and people, it was frustrating because especially bigger institutional investors would say, hey, this is really interesting. And then they would do a background check and then say, oh, what's all this stuff? Tell us about Woodland Meadows. That was kind of like I knew it was going to go bad after that. And so I'd so I'd write these explanation letters saying, yeah, well, here's what happened. And I'd address each thing in the media. And finally I said, I'm never going to get over this unless I write a book. So I wrote a book. And it gave my side of what happened. It really gave the truth of what happened. And so it kind of offset all the stuff that was in the media and in Google searches. And I learned from President Obama. Obama, before he ran for president, wrote a book. And in there, he shared that he experimented with cocaine in college. And that that way there was no Republican could go, hey, this guy experimented with cocaine. He'd say, well, that's my book. I already told everybody. So he kind of beat everyone to the punch. So I said, okay, everything bad that ever happened to me, everything bad that's I shared the good stuff too, but most importantly, everything bad, I put it in the book, and I said, okay, this is what happened, and this is the full facts. There's no slant here. This is what happened, and I'll tell you, and it wasn't only. It ended up succeeding in its result of sharing what really happened and kind of getting investors not only comfortable, but some investors saying, oh my goodness, people come up to me after I speak or whatnot and say, wow, I read your book. It's, I was really inspired by it. I see that, I also failed maybe on, in different level, and it's given me, hope or inspiration. But also for me, probably the one that benefited the most was me. When I wrote that, it was the first time I looked back at that period and saw, kind of relived everything that happened, saw the mistakes that I made. Although I certainly believe that the city has dirty hands in this, and other parties do, I made a lot of mistakes. I was in a situation I had never been in before, and looking back, I think, God, if I only did this at this point or that at that point, then I would have emerged with a better outcome. But nevertheless, what happened happened. And as I look back, there were times that I laughed, there were times that I cried, and it was very therapeutic. And I'm telling you, it's kind of cool because people tell me that they'll read the book and say, oh, this part really had me laughing, or I was really crying at this part. It comes through in the book, right. And you can, you live it with me, and so. As I've, years pass, it's gotten better, and, AHP has continued to grow. I think the book, just getting that past behind me and acknowledging what happened, but not saying, what I don't want to be judged is by, the worst thing that happened to me. Judge me on the good and the bad, and it's in the book. So that is what's happened, and it's grown. What's cool about American homeowner preservation is that when we started, I had this massive pile of debt. And it was 2008 when we started, and that was when the housing crisis began, and people were starting getting kicked out of their homes, couldn't afford their mortgages, things were severely underwater, and the thought was, can I share what I've learned as a debtor, and with all these other families, and come up with a solution to help keep them in their homes? And the company's evolved into an investment fund which purchases delinquent mortgages from banks at huge discounts, predominantly in low to moderate income neighborhoods across the country. And then we work with those families to keep them in their homes by sharing some of the discount with them. And if they don't want to stay, or it's vacant already, then we track them down. We offer them cash for a deed in lieu, and we try to get that vacant property back into service. So we're fulfilling a social mission, but we're also generating fantastic returns because we can buy these with good at these big discounts that some of the discount can go to the family. Some of the discount goes to our investors in the form of returns. So it's really it's continued to be a great model. It's something that's evolved. And people will ask me, well, hey, the financial crisis was 10 years ago. Are there still really many foreclosures? And that's a fair question. But I'll tell you, in the low to moderate income neighborhoods, it's still a crisis. 1 in 2 homeowners in low to moderate income neighborhoods with home values of under 50,000 are more than 25% underwater. And that's the second quarter of 2017. So it's still an epidemic. It's not so much in the suburbs and the higher, more affluent areas, but these low to moderate income neighborhoods, it's a crisis that's nowhere near solved, and we're trying to do our part towards solving it.
As I listen to you, some of the things that come to my mind, because what I admire, because I can understand this position, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, because I know many people who consider and may actually file bankruptcy for significantly less than 26 million? So
26 million.
They were nowhere near 26 million, and they go, I just can't do it. I'm going to file bankruptcy. What I'm curious to know is, what lesson did you learn by not filing bankruptcy? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
I mean, it would have been maybe easier because I'd have just filed and it would have been done. But what I learned, people I think file bankruptcy because they're looking for, it seems like a solution. And hey, I've done something that's now addressing this crisis and this uncertainty. I think that's the biggest thing that hangs over people's minds when they're overwhelmed with debt is uncertainty. Like, is someone going to take my house tomorrow? Is someone going to take my car tomorrow? Are they going to levy my bank? Are they going to garnish my wages? What's going to happen? And it's pretty unpredictable. So that's a fair, and most people aren't well educated on what happens because they just don't know. And intently it's opaque. But the reality is debtors have a ton of rights. And the rights are equal to that of a creditor. So just because Chase Bank says, "Hey, we gave you a credit card with $10,000 limit, you charged it all up, and now you lost your job and you can't pay. You got to pay this $10,000." Well, that's not necessarily true. You may have. I'm not disputing that you charge up to $10,000, but do they have all the documents to prove that you owe them the $10,000? If they were to sue you, are they suing you for $10,122? Do they have a life of loan pay history that shows that you owe that exact amount, or is it $1 more or $1 less? If it's $1 more or $1 less, they're going to have to start and refile. So there's a lot of rights that, as you get into mortgages or student loans, there's a lot of rights which debtors just don't exert. And so actually, my biggest lesson I learned from this was in a matter in Missouri when a creditor was pursuing me for. It was $5.3 million. And they made a mistake. And, first I thought, I'm in big trouble on this. And then I was running that night trying to relieve some stress. And I thought, wait, they can't do that. They made a little mistake. And I called my attorney the next day and said, hey, you're right. And so we went to court. We sued the creditor. And the judge said, they're right. Creditor, you lose. you lose this $5.3 million. You can't pursue him anymore for it. And so the creditor, of course, appealed, and it went to the Missouri Court of Appeals, which found unanimously that the creditor's attorney had inadvertently extinguished over $5 million in debt. So kind of cool. And then I thought, well, if this creditor did it, which is a big lender, national lender, I said, what about my other creditors? So that's when I started going through like these other lenders and starting seeing, well, what mistakes did they make? And it was fascinating to see. And it could be big banks, it could be Chase Bank, Bank of America, KeyBank. Routinely, they're making these tiny little errors, or sometimes they're significant, but lots of times they're clerical errors or whatnot, and things like that, or they can't find documents, or they're missing documents, and when they actually, if you challenge them, there's a good chance that they won't have what they need in order to ultimately get a judgment against you or get that money from you. So with today's bankruptcy laws, which are not that favorable to debtors, I'd say the better thing, if you felt like you can't afford your bills, is not to file bankruptcy. Simply stop paying the bills and then deal with them as they come up. And actually, I'm working on that's Debt Cleanse. That's the book. It gives you step by step for every type of debt that you get into, that you have trouble with, whether it's a student loan, a car loan, a house, a mortgage, or a payday loan, whatever it is, credit card. You can, it shows you the steps that you can take in order to gain leverage over those creditors, in order to settle those debts at pennies, or simply not pay them at all in some cases.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to want to talk about that. But right now, there's something else that you've said earlier that is like eating at me that I've got to highlight, because I think that there's a thought process that's out there in the marketplace where it can feel oxymoronic or contradictory. Like, if I want to earn money, then that means I have to take advantage of people. And yet you've founded a company that does well by doing good. So my question to you is, when it comes to just the concept of capitalism, does it have to be evil?
No, it doesn't. That's what's fascinating. Although I guess it's maybe the easy route to say, hey, if I can, you're on a seesaw, someone wins, someone loses. That's a typical Wall Street. Wall Street wins, everyone else loses. Or, that's just the way it works.
Right.
And it's slickly marketed so the losers think, okay, well, I'm doing okay. Really, no, you're not. Unfortunately, you're not. Eventually, it all ends up that things work to the advantage of the elite in this country and to the disadvantage of the majority of the population, and that's just the way it works. So we need to change that, and it's especially epidemic today, and that hopefully will change over time. And it hasn't been this bad in decades, but we need to change that. And but it's not. It's just on a rampage. You'll see the poorest people in this country will pay the highest rates of interest, will pay the highest, they need credit, they're getting payday loans, just outrageous terms. If you have great credit, if you're a member of the elite, you're paying next to nothing for your money. It's really, it keeps everyone, keeps the less fortunate down and keeps the elite rich. And this is, it's contributing to this ever-growing wealth divide, wealth gap, income gap. It's interest rate gap. There's all kinds of things where there's big gaps, and the gaps just keep growing in this country, which isn't good for anybody, including the elite. Eventually, if we end up with a country where, there's a handful of, a small percentage of the population which is getting all the benefits from the economy, and everyone else is just getting by, which is pretty close to what it is today, that's a bad situation and unsustainable.
Well, and what's interesting to me is that I think from an investment standpoint, you're giving what I would call uncommon access to, a market that most for example, if you want to be, when someone says, hey, I want to be an investor in real estate, they suddenly go, the first thing you hear all the time is, I don't have money. I don't have credit. But yet your minimums to participate with what you guys are doing are, I'm just going to say, insanely low.
It's $100.
That's my point. That's insanely, that's like, how does it work when you only, wow, amazing.
Well, I mean, there's a method to that. No one else that I'm aware of is that low. Most of them are $1,000, is very common, or some even $5,000 or $10,000 or more. But we wanted to make it accessible to anybody. I want the homeowners who benefit from our program because we bought their loans and we modified them.
I just want to make sure people get this. It's like, skip your cable bill for 1 month. That's literally what you're saying. That is really, really low. It just doesn't even, like, in my head when I'm like, did he forget a zero? Is there a comma missing? I just want people to really hear that what you're offering is just not normal, but awesome.
I appreciate it. No, so to be clear, it's $100. So someone can invest with a minimum investment of $100. And what I think is fabulous about the setup is that the person who invests $100,000, the person that invests $1 million, or the person that invests $100, they all get the same terms. There's not like, hey, if you invest $1 million, you get more, but that's common. We want everybody to get the same return, everyone to be in the same position, and so if you put $100, that's what you can afford, do it. And we welcome, and hopefully, you can invest more along the way. You can share with your friends and family. It's a social mission. We're using that money to purchase these loans at big discounts, share those discounts with families, and in order to help keep them in their homes and generate good returns for our investors. We've historically been paying a 12% to our return to our investors, 1% per month, and that is. It works. And to your point, and it's not, no one's losing. I mean, you can make the argument that the banks are losing, and they deserve it. But the reality is they're selling us the loans because it makes business sense for them. They're not doing it for a charitable way. They have these loans that people aren't paying, and so they sell them at a discount. And there you kind of see the first thread in my thinking of, hey, don't file bankruptcy, just don't pay. Because if you don't pay, eventually your lender will probably sell the loan at some big discount to some debt buyer who now, you owe Chase Bank $10,000, they sell it to XYZ debt buyer for $400. XYZ debt buyer may take $1,000 to settle your $10,000 credit card debt. So you see where the numbers all of a sudden make sense, and really the fact that Chase just lost whatever, I don't see anyone crying about that.
No, they're definitely not crying about it. They made it up somewhere else, probably.
Sure.
Now, at the end of the day, though, when it comes down to it, you said everybody wins, and that's very, very true. And I just want to make sure that people understand. It's like you're solving so many problems all at once. On one hand, you've got the person who needs a place to stay, and you're helping them do that. You have the investor who has money as low as $100, who has a need for that $100 to grow. And then in the middle, you've got people who need jobs, and you're providing all of those too. And in one concept, one idea has such an impact across so many different, verticals and help so many different people with just one transaction. I guess my question to you is, what's kind of next for AHP? I mean, because it sounds like it just needs to be everywhere.
So here's what we're doing. The one challenge that we've had is that we need to, almost every state in the country requires that you have a servicer license or a collection license in order to have direct contact with homeowners. And so we've historically had to work through licensed servicers in order to be the go-between between the homeowners and us in terms of resolving these. So, and we have to pay the servicers for that, and they do an okay job. I think we make the best of the arrangement, but it could be better, we believe, if we do it ourselves. So we're actually in the process of becoming a licensed mortgage servicer, and we have 10 licenses. We're licensed in 10 states right now, and we plan to launch that on March 1st, and we should be licensed in the majority of states by then, and by next summer we should be licensed in all states, plus DC, plus Puerto Rico. And our goal is then not only to service the loans that we buy, but also to offer servicing to other investors, other funds, other banks of their loans that maybe they're not ready to sell, but they want high-touch, socially responsible servicing. And I think it just doesn't exist right now. And I believe they'll generate better returns than than they could doing it, by the traditional playbook, which is, kick the homeowner out, resell the home. I think there's a huge opportunity, a way to scale this in an even greater way, provide more jobs, save more families, and extinguish more debt. Those are all goals that we can accomplish on a grander scale by becoming a servicer, we believe. And so that's our next step, and we're really excited about it. And it enables us to bring in, devote resources to technology, to a new management, to additional management staff and team members who can help drive and build this company.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So for those that have listened this far, those that are enjoying the story and probably want to find out more about what you guys are up to, what you're doing, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Sure, they can go to AHP Fund, so AHPFund.com, and you can learn all about our company there. You can contact us, you can contact me through the site, and that's the best way to connect. And if you are so inclined, you can invest as little as $100 while you're at it.
That is still amazing to me right there. So as we continue though, I have a question for you, a final question, if you will. Let's pretend that someone listening is actually going to follow through this time. They've been inspired by what you've said. They're like, oh my gosh, if he can go through all of that and still come out on the other end, I surely can start my business. I surely can make, something happen. But they're inspired and they have that idea, but like I know, in those moments of decisions, we're often accompanied with a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and that voice reminds us often of who we're not and what we can't do. And oh my God, do you remember what happened last time you tried something? And for some people, they're even related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. As I said, let's pretend they're going to follow through this time. In fact, they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. And my question to you is simply, what would you suggest that they do?
The biggest thing is to take that first step, and then the second step, and then the third step. Everything looks, we want to become a mortgage servicer. Okay, that sounds great, George. How are you going to do that? And okay, well, what's the first step? Getting a license. Okay, what's the next step? Getting technology. The third step, hiring management personnel. There's just list the steps, and all of a sudden, well, you may say, God, this is like 30 steps. That's a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, and it's certainly unpredictable. You get over it, you complete 3 steps, and then some other steps you didn't think about pop up. But if you can get to that first step, that seems, this is so basic, but it's really, I have to remind myself constantly, don't look all the way to the finish line. Just say, hey, let me see if I can get through the first mile, and then I can figure how to get through the second mile. And if you can do that and tie it together, then your brain kind of gets, okay, well, I'm doing okay here. I'm getting there. It may be taking longer. Maybe it's a little more difficult, more costly, but I'm 3 steps into this, and then 6 steps. And that's breaking it down. That's achievable bites towards the goal. That's what I always do. And I think everybody, I can't imagine doing it any other way. And also one big thing I have to say that I think is really easy out for a lot of people, and including me, I get the same thinking, is sometimes you think, well, someone else is I don't have this. I don't have, well, I could look at me, high school, back to the same thing, high school dropout, bad credit, judgment against me, look at all the things that I don't have, that not only don't have, or that I do have, that are bad for me, that should make it so that people wouldn't want to invest with me. But look at the things. Then you look at, okay, well, what do I have? And so focus on what you do have, and then push forward with that instead of focusing what you don't have. And you say, well, if only I had a college degree, or if only I had good credit, or if I only had this. Don't worry about that. Just go figure out what you have right now. You have something for sure, and you may not have some stuff. What you do have, just go forward with that. And along the way, you can get help from people you need to fill out, some of the skills or some of the areas that you don't have, that you're lacking. I mean, we're all weak. I've learned, this is another thing I've learned, focus on your strengths, and when there's a weakness, find someone else to help with that, because I'm not, there's things that I'm just not good at. And instead of trying to become a great manager, which I'm not, instead of saying I've tried stuff, I've gone to classes, I've gone to courses, I've joined different groups to help me improve that. And it's been helpful. So it's not wasted time, but at some point you say, okay, I can go from not good to mediocre, but I'm great at some things. Why don't I just spend my focus and time on that, and then hire somebody who is great at being a manager, building teams and things like that, and getting the best out of their teams. That's I think at some point you have to be a true assessment and say, I'm not going to be, you can't expect yourself to be great at everything. Find out what you're good at and maximize that.
Totally understood. I completely get it 100%. I definitely appreciate the wide breadth of experience, but yet the thread that goes through of how you make sure that you do have that focus, that discipline, that hard work, the things that actually make things happen. And most importantly, not giving much value to, the past, except as a learning lesson, when you find out that things didn't go exactly as planned. So I definitely want to be the first to thank you for taking the time to make an investment here of your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight today with the Cashflow Diary. I
really appreciate you having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? That means AHPfund.com. Why? It's $100. That's insane. And you heard the same thing you're like, oh my gosh, 12%, all of these things. You have actionable steps. You have something that you can do. You have an understanding that just because a few things have not gone the way that you originally intended, that is not the end of your story. In fact, I would say it's the next building block. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.